The snow fell gently on Winterfell's rooftops, as it had done 1,000 times before. Inside the godswood, Eddard Stark knelt beneath the weirwood tree, its red leaves whispering secrets only the old gods could understand, his face lined by war and duty, remained stoic, but his heart thundered with conflict. In his hands he held an old letter faded, sealed with a Targaryen sigil, and long hidden in the crypts. He had found it tucked behind Lyanna's statue, beneath the cold stone in grief that had long haunted him. The letter, written in Lyanna's delicate hand, bore truths that unraveled everything he thought he had protected. Jon is not my bastard. He is Aegon Targaryen, son of Rhaegar and me. Protect him, Ned. He is the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. For 15 years, Ned had borne the shame of fathering a bastard, enduring Catelyn's coldness and the whispers of the court, all to protect Jon. But now, with this truth laid bare, the weight felt heavier, more dangerous. The Game of Thrones was not one of honor. It was one of survival, of fire and blood. He rose from his knees, snow crunching beneath his boots as he strode toward the great hall. Robb and Jon sparred in the yard, laughter echoing despite the chill. Jon's swordsmanship had improved remarkably. Sir Roderick often praised his discipline. Ned watched him for a moment. He saw Rhaegar's bearing, Lyanna's fire, his own quiet resolve. A boy raised as a Stark, but born a dragon. That night, as the hearth crackled and shadows danced along the stone walls, Ned summoned Jon to his shoulder. The boy entered, uncertain. "You wanted to see me, father?" Ned winced. Father. Would he still call him that after the truth? "Sit, Jon." Jon obeyed, his eyes searching Ned's face. "There is a truth I've kept from you. One that could cost us both our lives if it were known." Ned paused, the firelight glinting off the tears he refused to shed. "You are not my son." "Jon's." Breath caught. "You are the son of my sister Lyanna, and Prince Rhaegar Targaryen. She died giving birth to you at the Tower of Joy. I promised her I would protect you, so I claimed you as my own." The silence was immense. Jon stared. Him, as if the world had shifted beneath his feet. "A Targaryen?" he whispered. "But how? Why didn't you tell me?" "Because Robert would have killed you. He hated all Targaryens. He would not have spared a babe, royal blood or not." Jon's hands shook. "So what does that make me?" Ned leaned forward. "It makes you a target. And perhaps one day it may make you a king. But not yet. No one can know this, not even Robb." Jon's eyes glistened. "I always wanted to know who I was. But this, I raised you as my own, and I do not regret it," Ned said firmly. "You are my blood through your mother. You are a Stark as much as any of my children." Jon nodded slowly, his face pale. "What do we do now?" "We wait. We watch. When the time is right, you will need allies. Until then, keep your head low. Let the world think you are a bastard. It is safer that way." As Jon left, the weight of 1,000 destinies pressed upon his shoulders. The next day, when King Robert and his retinue arrived at Winterfell, Ned greeted his old friend with a grim smile, the truth already altering his choices. When Robert offered him the position of Hand of the King, Ned accepted, but not just for duty, not just for honor. He had a deeper purpose now. He would go south not just to serve the realm, but to uncover the players who might threaten Jon's life. He would navigate the Lion's Den, not only as a Stark, but as the secret guardian of the last dragon-dot shadows stirred in the capital. Secrets waited in the crypts of the Red Keep, but Ned Stark was no longer just a loyal warden of the North. He was the keeper of a king. The journey south was long and bitter, despite the warm sun melting away the northern snow. Ned Stark rode, in grim silence beside King Robert, his mind wrestling with more than just politics. Every mile toward King's Landing brought him deeper into the web of secrets and liars, and further from the safety of Winterfell, where Jon, now aware of his true bloodline, stayed behind. Robert drank and laughed, oblivious to Ned's turmoil. "You remember the tourney at Harrenhal, don't you, Ned?" he bellowed, "when Lyanna crowned Rhaegar instead of me. Gods, I hated him for that." Ned's jaw tightened. "I remember." If Robert ever learned the full truth, he would not stop at hate. He would see Jon as a threat, not a boy. A rival for the throne. A symbol of the rebellion's greatest lie. By the time they reached the capital, Ned had resolved himself. He would find out what Jon's enemies already knew or suspected, and ensure none of them ever learned more. King's Landing reeked of secrets. Petyr Baelish greeted him with that sly smirk of his, offering whispers as currency. Varys, the spider, watched with unreadable eyes, already weaving his own silent webs. And Queen Cersei, her eyes were sharp, appraising. She saw too much, and trusted too little. Ned saw in her the type of person who would burn a kingdom to protect her children. He moved carefully, gathering knowledge like a soldier gathers weapons. Maester Pycelle spoke too freely when plied with wine. Varys offered cryptic warnings. "Many eyes are on you, Lord Stark. Some golden, some red." Ned paid attention to everything. The odd silences around Jon Arryn's death, the way Lancel poured Robert's wine, the strange darkness behind the Queen's perfect smile. Jon's truth was too volatile to share, but he had to find who had. Sniffed near it. One evening, Grand Maester Pycelle made a careless remark. Before he died, Lord Arryn asked too many questions about bastards and bloodlines. I warned him, the past is best left buried. Ned's blood froze. Bastards? Oh yes. He visited many black-haired boys. Street urchins, some of them. One worked at an armory. Ned knew what that meant. Jon Arryn had uncovered the truth about Cersei's children, and perhaps had begun sniffing too, close to Jon Snow's own parentage. If one truth could destroy the Lannisters, the other could destroy Jon. The danger had never felt so real. He visited the armory boy himself, Gendry, the smith's apprentice. Black hair, strong jaw, eyes like Robert. A bastard, unmistakably. The king's son, unclaimed. Jon Arryn had been trying to prove the truth with blood. Ned had to stay ahead of that game. At night, he wrote letters to Winterfell, encoded in the old northern tongue. He instructed Jon to begin training harder, but not just swordsmanship. "Learn to lead men," he wrote. "Learn history. Learn the realm." He did not write the words, "You may one day rule," but they echoed in every line. But secrets in King's Landing never stayed buried. One night, Varys visited him in his chambers, silent as mist. "If you care for the boy," the eunuch whispered, "do not linger. The queen grows suspicious, and the wolves have teeth." "She knows?" "She suspects," Varys said. "Or worse, she assumes. If she believes he's a Targaryen, she will not wait for proof." Ned nodded grimly. "Then I must move quickly." He began to document everything. The lineages of the royal children, Jon Arryn's final movements, the whispered conversations he overheard in corridors. A pattern emerged, one of incest, of bastards placed carefully, of the queen's ruthless determination. When he confronted Cersei in the Godswood, as he had once done in the north, he did so with measured confidence. "Your children are not Robert's," he said coldly. "I know, and so did Jon Arryn." Cersei's face was calm, but her voice cut like glass. "And what will you do with that knowledge, Lord Stark? Tell Robert? Risk war? Or protect your own secrets, as I protect mine?" Their eyes locked. It was a moment of unspoken threats. Both held secrets that could shatter kingdoms. But Ned knew her warning was real. If she ever suspected Jon Snow's truth, she would strike without hesitation. As he returned to the Tower of the Hand that night, Ned realized the game had changed. It was not just a question of honor anymore. It was a question of survival for himself, for his family, and for the last heir of the dragon. The lions were circling, but winter was watching. Ned Stark slept little in the following weeks. The moment he stepped into the capital, he had known it was a pit of vipers, but now it felt like a trap slowly closing in around him. Every movement was calculated. Every word spoken could cost. Lives, especially Jon's. He spent his days gathering information, pushing away courtiers, and following the trail Jon Arryn had left behind. The boy Gendry had been only one of many. Black-haired children scattered across the city, ignored by Robert, yet proving what should have been obvious. Cersei's children were not his, but Ned hesitated to confront Robert with the truth. Cersei's children were illegitimate. Robert's rage would tear the realm apart. War with the Lannisters would be inevitable. And in such chaos, someone like Jon, revealed as a Targaryen, would not be seen as a long-lost heir, but as a rival. Claimant. Another spark for civil war. And yet, doing nothing was just as dangerous. One night, in his chambers, he took out Lyanna's letter again. Her words were faded, but he had memorized every line. Jon is the rightful heir. Keep him safe. Tell him when he's ready. When he's ready? But what if the world would never be ready? He needed an ally. Someone he could trust, someone not beholden to the crown, but who had influence, knowledge, and a reason to care. He thought of Stannis Baratheon, Robert's austere younger brother. Cold, rigid, but loyal to law and truth. And most importantly, if Robert died, Stannis would inherit. Unless someone else stood in his way, Ned sent a raven to Dragonstone under heavy encryption, detailing what he had discovered about Cersei's children. He left Jon's truth out of it, one secret at a time. He urged Stannis to return to King's Landing and claim his rightful position, but ravens could be intercepted. So he sent another, this one to Howland Reed, his old friend from the Tower of Joy, the only other living man who knew Jon's secret. The time may come soon. Be ready to act. If anything happens to me, protect the boy. Days passed. Then, the king went hunting. It should have been a simple outing: Robert, Lancel, a few squires and guards. But something gnawed at Ned's instincts. The timing was too perfect. He had just begun pushing back against Lannister influence, just refused to sanction the assassination of Daenerys Targaryen across the sea, just sent word to Stannis. Then Robert returned bloody, dying, gored by a boar. The palace erupted into chaos. Ned stood beside his old friend's bed as the king gasped his final breaths. Robert, bloated and ruined, grasped Ned's wrist. Make it right, Ned. Don't let them win. I will, Ned whispered. I swear it. But Robert never heard. He died with wine and blood on his lips. Ned moved quickly. He wrote the king's final will, naming him protector of the realm until Joffrey came of age. But instead of Joffrey, Ned wrote the rightful heir. The difference was subtle, but crucial. Littlefinger promised his support. Varys remained cautious. Renly approached Ned secretly, urging him to act now. We take the boy and the throne at once, Renly hissed. Strike before Cersei does. But Ned refused. I will not shed blood in the Red Keep. I will not start a war for a crown built on lies. Renly fled with Loras Tyrell the next morning. Then Cersei struck. She tore Robert's will in half, seized the throne for Joffrey, declared Ned a traitor. When he tried to protest, the City Watch, bought by Littlefinger's lies, turned on him. In the throne room, surrounded by gold cloaks, Ned's hand hovered over the scroll revealing Cersei's crimes. But in that moment, he thought not of Robert, not of the throne. He thought of Jon, of a boy in the north with the blood of wolves and dragons, of a boy who could still be saved. He dropped the scroll and surrendered Dot as the guards dragged him away. His final thoughts were of snow-covered fields, of Lyanna's tears, of a promise he had yet to fulfill. The game was no longer about thrones. It was about keeping Jon alive. The dungeons beneath the Red Keep were cold and damp, but Eddard Stark felt neither. The pain in his leg from the betrayal, the thirst from days without clean water, the stench of stone and blood, none of it mattered. Now, what haunted him more than the cell walls were the faces of his children, and the burden he had passed on to a boy in the north who still barely understood what he was. Jon Snow. Hagon Targaryen Dot, if they killed Ned, the truth might die with him. Unless he acted, the door to his cell creaked open. Varys entered silently, his robes brushing the floor like a whisper of silk. "You've lost weight, Lord Stark. The capital has not been kind." "I've seen worse," Ned muttered. "Get to the point." Varys gave a slight smile. "There is hope for your life, if you'll bend. The Queen wants peace at least, for now. She offers mercy if you confess to treason and swear fealty to King Joffrey." Ned stared at the eunuch. "She offers mercy to save her power. And you? I offer you a chance to live, to protect your children, perhaps to send word to the north." Ned's brow furrowed. "You know." "I know many things, Varys," replied coolly. "Enough to understand that your bastard may not be a bastard at all." Ned leaned forward slowly. "If you breathe a word of it, I won't, because I believe the realm may yet need the boy," Varys said, eyes gleaming. "He is not like the Mad King, nor like the cruel Targaryens of old. He could be something different, but only if he lives. And what would you ask in return? Only that you stay alive long enough to guide him. You are the only one who can." Varys left without waiting for a reply, but his message lingered. When Sansa came to plead for her father's life, Ned saw the opportunity. She had written a letter to Robb, under Cersei's influence, begging her brother to bend the knee. But it was more than that. It was a window. Ned asked for ink and parchment, under the pretense of writing a confession. What he wrote instead was another letter, this one addressed not to Robb, but to Mester Luwin Coded, hidden in the folds of Sansa's plea. "Tell Jon he must not trust the lions. He must become what he was born to be. The wolf must hide the dragon until it is time to fly." He signed it with a single name, Eddard. The morning of his supposed confession arrived with a grim sky and a jeering crowd. Ned stood before the Sept of Baelor, broken in body, unbowed in spirit. He saw Sansa in the crowd, weeping. Cersei on the balcony, smug. Joffrey young, cruel, unpredictable. He took a deep breath and spoke. "I, Eddard Stark, confess to treason." The crowd gasped. Cersei looked relieved. But Ned was not finished. "I plotted against the crown, because I believed another should sit the throne. But I was wrong. I chose the path of mercy." He did not name names. He did not speak of bastards or bloodlines. He let them think he had caved. Cersei gave the nod. The crowd murmured. Ned's heart beat faster. Then Joffrey stood. "My mother wants mercy," the boy said, voice thin and sharp. "But treason must be punished." Ned turned sharply. "Something was wrong." "Bring me his head," Cersei shouted. Varys stepped forward, frantic. The High Septon recoiled. Even Ser Barristan flinched. But the boy would not yield. And Ned Stark, Warden of the North, protector of the last dragon, was forced to his knees. As the sword fell, silence rippled through the capital. But far to the north, in the halls of Winterfell, Mester Luwin broke the seal of a hidden letter and read its contents with growing dread. He passed it quietly to Jon Snow. The boy read it once. Then again he did not cry. He did not speak, but something in his eyes changed. A fire lit behind them. Not of vengeance, yet, but of understanding. He was not just Jon Snow. He was Aegon Targaryen. And his time had not yet come. But one day it would. Winterfell was quiet in the days after the raven arrived. The black wings bore not just words of death, but the slow cracking of the world Jon Snow thought he understood. Mr. Lewin gave him the letter in private, and Jon had read it again and again, committing every line to memory. He said nothing to Robb, to Theon, to anyone, not yet. The truth was too heavy, too dangerous. His father was dead. But Eddard Stark hadn't been his father. And yet he had been. More than anyone ever could be. Now Jon knew why the Lord of Winterfell had always seemed conflicted when speaking of honor, why his eyes dimmed at the word bastard. He knew now that the shame Ned had worn like a cloak was not real shame. It was protection. Jon wasn't the dishonor of House Stark. He was its last promise. He sat in the godswood beneath the weirwood tree, rereading the letter, though every word already burned in his heart. Tell Jon. He must not trust the lions. He must become what he was born to be. The Vilf must hide the dragon until it is time to fly. He whispered the words aloud, as if they might bring Ned's voice back. But only the wind replied, rustling through red leaves. The next day, Robb summoned his BANNERMEN. Word of Ned's death spread quickly. House Stark called its banners, the North rising in fury. Robb's youth could not hide the steel in his voice as he declared, "We march south. We will bring justice." Jon watched, torn. Every part of him wanted to ride with Robb, to spill blood for the father who had given his life for truth. But another part whispered caution. He wasn't just Jon Snow anymore. He approached Mr. Lewin late that night. "Did you tell anyone about the letter?" "No," the old man said, watching him carefully. "Do you want me to burn it?" "No," Jon said. "Hide it, somewhere only you and I know." He paused. "And if something happens to me?" "Send word to Howland Reed." Jon had never met the man, but the letter had named him. The last witness to the truth at the Tower of Joy. Jon tried to sleep, but the dream returned. Lyanna's voice in the darkness, crying out. Rhaegar's face, shadowed and silent. A cradle, bloodied. The sword at Ned's feet. He awoke with a decision. He sought out Samwell Tarly near the rookery. "I need you to help me do something." "Dangerous." Sam blinked. "Dangerous how?" "I need to find out what's true about my mother. And I think the Citadel might hold answers. Records. Secret ones." Sam frowned. "You think they would have something about Rhaegar and Lyanna?" "I don't think it. I need it to be true." Sam, loyal and nervous, agreed. Before dawn, Jon saddled Ghost and took one last look at Winterfell. Robb was preparing for war. Bran had fallen into silence. Arya was nowhere to be found. Rickon clung to his direwolf, unaware of the storm descending. Jon turned south, not to join Robb's army, but to begin his own quiet war. A war of secrets. A war for truth. He traveled alone at first, avoiding the King's Road, listening to whispers. In taverns. Every bard's song about Rhaegar made his blood boil. They painted him as either a monster or a tragic hero. No one spoke of Lyanna's choice. No one knew what really happened, but Jon would find out. He traveled through White Harbor, then east toward the Neck. There, he hoped to find Howland Reed, the man who had fought beside Ned at the Tower of Joy, the man who might hold the last living memory of Jon's birth. The Crannog men were elusive, but Jon had Stark blood. He used the name Snow Still for safety, but he carried Ned's sigil in his pack. When he reached the swamps, the air thick with mist, the earth sinking beneath his boots, he finally encountered sentries watchers with frog-skin cloaks. And eyes like Pete. "I seek Howland Reed," John told them. They vanished. 2 days later, a boat came. No words were spoken. John climbed aboard. He was taken to Greywater Watch, a castle that moved, unseen by enemies or allies alike. There, he met Howland Reed. The man looked older than the world itself, but when he saw John, he did not question. He only said, "Your eyes, your mother's fire, your father's silence." John stood straight. "I need to know everything." Howland nodded Dot, and he began to speak of blood, of vows, of the Tower of Joy, Dot of dragons, and wolves, the mists of... The neck coiled like ancient spirits as Howland Reed sat across from John. Snow in the stillness of Greywater Watch. The air smelled of damp moss and history. They sat in a hall made of weirwood and bone, decorated with feathers, old weapons, and relics from battles long past. A fire crackled between them, low and steady. The only sound as Howland stared into John's eyes. "You know part of the truth," he began, voice like wind through reeds. "But not all." John said nothing, letting the silence draw out. He had learned much on the road, how to wait, how to listen. "I was there when your mother died," Howland said, gaze drifting to the fire. "At the Tower of Joy in Dorne. Your father, Ned, he fought Sir Arthur Dane and Sir Gerald Hightower. Only he and I survived. They were the best swordsmen I've ever seen." John's throat tightened. "And my mother?" "She was dying," Howland said softly. "Blood from the birth. But she lived long enough to make Ned promise to protect you from Robert, from the realm. Rhaegar loved her, truly, and she loved him. But the world would not care. They would call it abduction, treason, rebellion." John's voice cracked. "She named me Aegon?" Howland nodded. Rhaegar's first son by Elia Martell had the same name, but he died during the sack of King's Landing. Rhaegar believed in prophecy. He believed in a prince that was promised. He thought you were the one. John sat back, reeling. "Why didn't you come forward?" "For the same reason Ned didn't. You were safer as a snow." John felt the weight of it, like chainmail. All his life, he had wanted to be someone, to be legitimate, to be seen, and now he was. But not in a way that brought peace. This name, this blood, came with a crown and a curse. What am I supposed to do with this? He whispered. Howland fixed him with eyes sharp as arrowheads. "Survive, grow, learn. The time for truth will come, but not yet. The South is at war. The lions hold the throne. Your cousin Robb marched to avenge your father. Should I not be with him? You could be. But if the truth were revealed now, do you think his men would follow him still?" Howland asked. "Would they turn to the dragon over the wolf?" John looked away. "I don't want a throne." "You may not have a choice." That night John dreamed again. He stood in a field of ash, swords sticking from the ground like broken branches. A red comet hung in the sky. From the flames stepped 2 figures. One wore a crown of silver, the other a cloak of black fur. They spoke no words, but pointed toward a mountain. Behind it, Dragon stirred. He awoke with sweat on his brow and fire in his chest. The next morning, Howland gave him a parting gift, a bundle wrapped in black leather. Inside was a torn page from a book. It listed Rhaegar Targaryen's marriage to Elia Martell, and beneath it a single hastily added note, annaled, "Rude to Lyanna Stark, in secret." Proof, a crown's worth in it. John tucked it away and thanked Howland. "What happens now?" "You go where the war isn't," Howland said. "Live, watch, learn. When the storm breaks, the realm will need more than swords. It will need truth." John traveled north again, but not all the way to Winterfell. He passed quietly through villages, cloaking himself in shadows and snow. At the wall, word came of Robb's victories. Jaime Lannister captured, the Riverlands ablaze with stark banners. And north was roaring. Jon yearned to be there, to fight, to reclaim what was taken. But instead, he rode to Castle Black. He had made a choice. "I want to take the Black," he told the men at the gate. "I am no lord's son. I seek honor and service." The irony wasn't lost on him. He joined the Night's Watch not as Jon Snow the Stark bastard, nor as Aegon Targaryen, heir to the Iron Throne. He joined as a man hiding fire beneath fur. And far beyond the wall, something ancient stirred. Blue eyes opened in darkness. Horns echoed in the distance. Winter was coming, but so was the dragon. The wall loomed before Jon like the edge of the world. Cold and ancient, it whispered secrets through the wind of things forgotten, of men lost, of threats buried beneath ice and time. He stood among the Black brothers of the Night's Watch. A sworn brother now, but carrying a truth none of them could ever suspect. To them, he was Jon Snow, a bastard of Winterfell, quiet and dutiful. But inside, his blood burned with fire. He kept his head low. He learned the routines. He trained. He listened. He watched. Castle Black was full of men with broken pasts, thieves, poachers, second sons. But Jon was different. He was here not because of disgrace, but to protect a legacy too dangerous. To speak aloud, Samwell Tarly arrived soon after. Frightened, soft-spoken, kind. Jon recognized something valuable in him, not strength, but loyalty and insight. And in the quiet of the library, Jon began to guide Sam. Look for records, he whispered one night when no one else was near. Targaryen history, marriages, annulments. See if anything was written in the south. Dorne, especially. Sam blinked. Targaryens? Why? Jon hesitated. Then, "I'm curious." Sam never questioned further. But Jon saw the glint of curiosity in his friend's eyes, and he trusted that in time, the truth would take root. Ravens came and went, bearing tidings from the war. Robb was crowned king in the north. The Lannisters burned the Riverlands. Stannis declared himself rightful king, yet gained little support. Jon felt each shift like a tremor in his bones. The realm was splitting, and in the cracks, danger spread. But more than politics, Jon sensed a greater threat stirring beyond the wall. Scouts vanished. Rangers returned speaking of strange things, corpses that walked, shadows with blue eyes. Villages wiped clean. Jeor Mormont, the old bear, gathered riders for a great ranging. Jon was chosen to go beyond the wall. Before he left, he wrote a letter just in case. He gave it to Maester Aemon with no seal. "If anything happens to me," Jon said quietly, "send this to Maester Luwin in Winterfell." Aemon tilted his head. "Do you know who I am, boy?" "I do," Jon said. "Aemon Targaryen." The old man's pale eyes glinted. "And do you know who you are?" Jon said nothing, but Aemon smiled faintly. "Then we understand each other." Jon rode north with the rangers, Ghost at his side, wind cutting like knives. The land beyond the wall was desolate, but not dead. Something watched them from the trees. They found wildling villages emptied of life, fires left burning, no signs of struggle, just silence. When they reached Craster's keep, Jon's unease deepened. Craster was vile and cruel, but he knew things. He spoke of the white shadows, of offering his sons to them. "They take the boys and leave me be," Craster growled. "The gods want what they want." Jon almost drew his sword. But Mormont's warning echoed. "We need his shelter, more than his blood." Still at night, Jon followed Craster into the woods and saw him leave a newborn child on the ice. He watched, breath held. As a figure emerged from the trees, tall, pale, eyes glowing blue, John returned shaken, but wiser. The threat was real. The wall did not stand to keep wildlings out. It stood to hold something far worse at bay. When they returned to Castle Black, he began writing again. Letters to Lewin, to Sam, to Howland Reed. He wrote of what he saw carefully. Vaguely, but enough to raise alarm. Then came the fire. News from the south. Renly was dead. Stannis had lost at Blackwater. Robb had broken his betrothal to the Freys. John's heart sank. The realm was tearing itself apart, and all the while, no one was looking north. One night, Maester Aemon called John to his chambers. War is coming. Boy, he said, not just of kings, of death and cold and shadow. The wall may fall, but you must not. John asked, what should I do? Be what they need. Be what they fear. When the time comes, you'll know which. That winter, the wildlings marched south under Mance Rayder. John was chosen to go undercover. A spy. A traitor to gain their trust. He rode beyond the wall once more, carrying not just the weight of duty, but of legacy. In the camp of the wildlings, he saw giants, mammoths. He saw Ygritte, with her red hair and sharp eyes, and something inside him stirred conflict between the wolf and the dragon. But most of all, he saw what was coming. The White Walkers were not myths. They were real. John knelt in the snow, facing Mance Rayder's fire, and thought not of the throne, or his name, or even Lyanna. He thought of the living, the realm. And how it would burn. If no one stood against the cold, snow drifted down like ashes as Jon Snow stood at the edge of the world. The flames of Mance Rayder's camp flickered behind him, but his eyes were fixed north on the shadowed lands where no fire reached, where the dead moved beneath the snow and ice, silent and patient. He had seen them. He had felt the cold not of winter, but of death. And he knew now. Titles, thrones, names they meant nothing if the living could not survive what was coming. He played the part of Oathbreaker well. To the wildlings, he was just another turncloak of the Night's Watch. He shared fires with them, learned their names, fought beside them. But in the silence between moments, he remembered Ned's voice. The wolf must hide the dragon until it is time to fly. And John understood. Flying was not about a crown. It was about rising when others fell, about standing when the world burned and froze in the same breath. He grew close to Ygritte. She challenged him, loved him, made him question everything. Yet he knew deep down that this could not last. He was a Stark in his bones and a Targaryen in his blood. Duty would always call him away. Then came the horns, 3 blasts. The dead had come. The battle at the Fist of the First Men was not a battle, it was a massacre. Shadows with blue eyes tore through seasoned rangers. Screams echoed in the dark, as blades shattered and men froze with barely a breath. John fought through the madness, but the fear was more than human. He escaped with a few survivors, bloodied and breathless, and sent ravens the moment they reached safety. The dead are coming. The wall will fall if we do nothing. Forget your wars. Remember your oaths. Most ravens would be ignored, but not. All at Castle Black, word came of Robb's death. The Red Wedding had shattered the north. Catelyn was gone. Talisa, Grey Wind, hope itself. John knelt in the snow and wept. He was alone now. The last echo of both Stark and Targaryen. A boy who had no name, had inherited them all. Then came Stannis Baratheon, marching north with fire and steel. Melisandre, the Red Priestess, looked at Jon as if she saw his soul. You are more than you know, she whispered. Blood of kings. Fire in your veins. But Jon distrusted prophecy. He had seen too much death wrapped in holy words. When the brothers of the knights watch cast their votes for the next Lord Commander, it was John they chose, not because of his name, but because he had led, he had bled, he had protected them. When no one else did, he accepted, not with pride, but with purpose. Then came hard home thousands of wildlings. The White Walkers descended like a plague, and John fought in the heart of it. He killed a walker with Longclaw, saw the Night King raise the dead with a single lift of his arms. No words, just death made flesh. When he returned, the wall seemed smaller. Everything did. He had seen what was coming, and no one was ready. Then came betrayal, his own brothers. Knives in the dark, for the watch. And everything went cold, but death did not claim him. He returned, not as the boy who dreamed of bastardy and honor, but as a man who had crossed the threshold of life. He carried silence in his eyes, and a question in his soul. Why had he been brought back? Then came Daenerys. Fire and blood arrived on dragon wings, a queen with no throne, a woman of his blood, a symbol of everything he might have been, had Ned Stark not lied. When they met, fire recognized fire, and yet he did not kneel for ambition. He knelt for the living. He told her of the dead, of the wall, of what mattered. They fought together, against the dead, against the living, and in that war, truth surfaced like a sword from snow.saw. Lel came to him, holding old scrolls from the citadel. Proof. Rhaegar had annulled his marriage to Elia, had wed Lyanna. Jon was not just a Targaryen. He was the true-born heir. Aegon, the Iron Throne, was his by blood, more than Daenerys, more than any. But Jon had never cared for thrones. He cared for the realm. And when Daenerys burned King's Landing, when fire became tyranny, Jon stood alone again, between love and duty, between mercy and justice. He chose the realm. He killed her with a whisper. You are my queen. And then the blade. When Drogon flew away with her body, Jon thought it was the end, but it was only the beginning. They exiled him to the wall. But he did not weep. He passed through Castle Black, through the gate, into the north once more. He rode with the wildlings toward the lands beyond, toward something untouched by crowns and shadows. He had no banners, no title, no house, but behind him a legend followed. Not Jon Snow, not Aegon Targaryen, but the man who kept the realm alive, the wolf who hid the dragon until the time came to fly. And now, free of thrones and chains, he flew into the snow, into the story. Forever.